Behold, trapped in a hellscape of their own invention, socially unaware old white men bound by the pretense of being fake lawyers yet knowing no law, no exquisite Latin terminology, they are inexplicably compelled to quibble over minutia, squabble over triflings, and bicker like those who value their backyards far too highly without even knowing the difference between an easement and an alleyway. At this very moment, you have entered the heart of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker with your hosts, Matt and Greg. Unfortunately, Brendan is out. He got the COVID, everybody. He lives in Florida, so now it's the law that you're supposed to get the Delta variant if you live in Florida. So he's just obeying the law, everyone. So don't feel too bad about it. He and his entire family have COVID. It is not good. But luckily, he's got relatively mild symptoms. Hopefully, we'll see him in the next week or two, and we'll go on from there. However, today we do have a very special guest who does not have COVID, as far as we know. His name is Mark Stancil, and he is the CEO and Editor-in-Chief of Terminus Media, which is a comic book graphic novel publication company that is based in Georgia. And he is going to be discussing a bit about what his company is doing and the comic books that they're putting out. And then perhaps, if he chooses, he will help us with our fake client later on, which is accepting you are part of the problem, not the solution. So, just getting general acceptance for that. But today, Greg has found us a fake sponsor to start the show. So who's sponsoring us today, Greg?
Well, today we actually don't just have a sponsor. They actually sent me like a promo clip.
Oh no!
Yeah, a commercial.
I have no idea what's
and
going on
I have to
here.
set up my Super 8 projector right now, and let's see.
It looks like a bowl to me. Is this the Super 8 projector? Is that a cheese grater? What are you?
I think it looks like a garlic press to me. I don't know.
You're making this entirely too complicated. All right.
So I have to let me just hit the projector here.
You should all know today is August 4th, everybody, since I didn't tell the date.
Let me
and while he's doing whatever he's doing, you can find us at www.qsblaw.org.
We've never run a video on here before. So
yeah, it doesn't look like we are right now either.
On August 19th, acclaimed filmmaker Porfirio Renticar, director of Blood in the Risotto, Crime Brulee, and Who Do I Have to Kill to Get Some Extra Guava Sauce for My Lumpia, will usher you into a world of culinary terror. Random Bloodwood Pictures, in association with Chef Tell Productions, is proud to present There's an Eye in My Soup. See what the critics are saying is queasy to the stomach, and a bloody bouillabaisse of masterful suspense with a soupcon of horror. You will never look at a garlic press the same way again. This film is not Michelin Guide rated.
That is very creative, Greg. Is that hot sauce you poured over your garlic press?
How did you guess? I thought it was supposed to be blood. Why'd you ruin it?
I'm sorry. I had to explain it to the people who don't watch the videos on YouTube. They listen to us on the basic podcast.
Might be triggered by the sight of blood. So everyone go see that movie. It sounds really scary.
What's the name of it again, Greg?
There's an eye in my soup.
On my soup. It was hard to hear you because of the music.
Oh no.
So I was straining. But it was very creative. I'll give you lots of credit. That was quite the production you put on for us today.
Yeah.
And it deserved a lot more accolades than I'm willing to give you. So, all right. Sorry for putting up with that, Mark. I appreciate
What are you talking about? That was freaking brilliant. That was a work of art right there.
Greg is our resident artist. So we'll give, he actually has had his own comic strip in an alternative weekly back in the 90s in Arizona. So he has some experience with the creation of something in that medium. Anyway.
It was just a college newspaper.
Well, it's still an alternative.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I started reading comics in the funny papers back in the day. Sunday was like the greatest because you get the big like 2 pages of bright, colorful comics that just come in with the rest of the newspaper.
What were
You
your
must be
favorites?
young
And
if
for
you were
those
only getting 2
kiddies in the
pages.
Oh
What
yeah.
were your favorite
oh yeah.
strips?
For the kiddies in the audience, a newspaper is this big paper thing that people used to get news on. Now they get all their news on the internet. So
Right. If they can
little
find it,
PSA
if they
there.
can find the actual news as opposed to the.
Right. If they can
They can get
find
their
the
opinion
news that
pieces.
They
that's
still
right.
have comic
They can go
strips.
find
though.
the news that they can go find the news they already agree with and then go read lots of that.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what
You
I
get your
want.
own brand of news these days. You didn't used to be able to do that. So
When
You
did
know.
you start Terminus Media and why?
we started Terminus Media back in the early 2000s. And we started Terminus Media because we were a bunch of young writers and artists with no experience whatsoever. And we felt, and we had gotten a bunch of no's from people. Hey, Marvel, how about I work on your comic book? I work cheap. No, thanks. We got hundreds of other people here that have more experience than you, more knowledge than you, and they live in New York or Los Angeles. Or whatever town we happen to be in. So thanks, but no thanks, fellas. So we started Terminus Media because we got no's and we had no experience and we had no knowledge of what we needed to do to create and sell comics. So we just took the resources we had, meaning people and the money that we had in the room, and we just started with what we had, which was which also started with no, nothing, right? So we started creating our comic books. This is our first comic book that we created. We called it the Evolution series because we felt like we were starting from nothing and becoming something.
Was that
And,
like Howard the Duck that was on the cover of that?
I'm sorry, say again.
It looked like it was like Howard the Duck on the cover.
Yeah, the cover actually had nothing to do with the content on the inside, which we found out later is not a great idea.
It had nothing to do with the content. I've seen some comic books do that though in the past. You open it up and you're like,
right.
"Where's the story that I bought?"
Right? Have you ever done that? Have you ever bought a comic book because it had great comic book art, and then you looked on the inside and it was all this black and white stuff, and
That was my whole childhood.
Yeah, it felt like false advertising when you buy a book with a color comic, color cover, and then you open it and it's like, why is everything in black and white? But we didn't have money to print color comics, so we made this little book with we made a little logo and
how much did that set you back about? What does something like that roughly cost to put out something that because that looks nice, it's black and white. It looks pretty slick.
It cost 2 shoestrings. So we had a double shoestring budget, one for the production of the book, which actually took a year and a half. Because when you get a bunch of creative people in a room, they're all like, "We're going to take over the world. We're going to do this." And 6 months later, only one of the 5 guys has actually done anything except talk about it. The guy who was originally supposed to draw my story in the book, I was like, "Hey, do you want to draw this little 8-page story? It'll, there's no money in it, but hey, we want to create a comic book." He's like, "Oh yeah, I want to do it." And 6 months later, he hadn't done anything, and he was like, "If you want me to work on this, you got to show me the money." And I was like, "But we don't have any money." So so we found a guy who was like, "I'll do it for nothing," except I guess the promotion that he might get from this company that never created a comic book, creating a comic book. And so, we just moved forward on that basis and made all kinds of mistakes. One of those is asking people to work for free, right? We don't do that anymore. It's like one of our policies that we honor the people who work on our books by giving them certificates of appreciation with presidents' faces on them, right?
That's a nice thing to do. I'm sorry, I'm a little slightly distracted because you're coming across as a disembodied head to me, but I'm kind of enjoying the experience that I can't see your
Okay.
shoulders. It's just like you from the neck up.
Can I
So
back up the camera a little bit? Is that better?
no, I didn't
How's that?
mean to like make you do it. Yeah, I want you to get closer in, to where you just see like your nose, maybe.
Oh, how's that?
That's kind of like Greg work there.
How's that?
It's perfect. So what was your actual background then?
Max Headroom thing.
What were you personally doing before you decided to start the comic book company?
I was doing data integration. I was a computer guy, programmer,
Okay.
MCSE network guy, and that kind of work is it's like doing algebra, right? There's only, I mean, I guess with technical stuff, there's a few ways you can do it, but when you do it, especially I was doing data integration in the medical field, right? Sending data from this medical system to this medical system. There's really no room for error in that kind of work. So, things are very precise. They have to be a certain way. And I just needed a creative outlet. I was like, man, all this technical programming and testing and deployment and being on call, like a lot of technical guys are, it was just kind of like sucking the soul out of me. So I wanted to do something creative. I wanted to tell stories, and I love films, and we started out actually as a writers group that we called Write Club. It was when Brad Pitt was fighting himself in the basement with the other guy in the movie. I forget his name.
Fight Club.
Yeah, Fight Club. Yeah.
Okay, you're not supposed to talk about that, Mark. It's the first rule.
Yeah. Sorry to talk about. I know the first rule is that
you can't talk about Write Club though.
Yeah.
But I am talking about Write Club, which so we started out as a writers group and critiquing the films that we were seeing, and it's all derivative of other stuff, and why do we need 27 sequels to Fast and Furious? We were asking questions like that in the group, and we just started writing screenplays, and there's zero film business in Atlanta at the time. I know Atlanta's kind of a big deal in the film business today, with a lot of Marvel movies and other things, Stranger Things being filmed here. But there was no film business here at the time, and we didn't live in New York, Los Angeles. So we actually started, doing these comic books to be storyboards for the films we wanted to make.
Oh, okay. And that's interesting.
We figured that was a creative way to not just get eyes on our ideas, but also to create a product that we could sell. Because if you monetize what you're doing, then you can keep doing it. And so that's what we did, and we took our little homemade setup to a nerd convention in Atlanta called Dragon Con, which is, I know I'm biased, but it's a great convention. And
that's been around since I was a kid. I remember reading about. I've never got to go because it's too far, but that's been around since I was a little boy. I remember seeing ads.
Wait, you called it a nerd convention as if you're above that.
No, I say nerd in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Like, to me, a nerd is like a compliment. If you say, "Hey, nerd," I'm like, "That's me."
Okay.
But
it's the N word, the other N word.
it's to me, a nerd is a great term. So
I just want to clarify for our nerd listeners.
Yes. I'm a huge nerd, and I'm proud of that. But we took our little comic book to Dragon Con, and we sold a couple hundred copies, and we were like, holy smokes, like people actually bought our little book that we produced. We printed it in China for about $1,000.
So you brought COVID over. Now we understand.
No, this was back in the early 20s.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
So,
you brought Ebola over.
Yeah, I only heard of
SARS-1 or something.
Exactly. SARS 3.5, I think it was. But we were surprised, and we were pleasantly surprised that we sold that many comic books. And so we kept going, and we made 3 books in that Evolution series. And then we started making standalone comics, and then we started making graphic novels, taking, 2 or 3 issues of a comic book series and putting them into a nice, thick, perfect bound book.
So are you guys going to be making films, or have you already made films, or you're pretty much happy just making comics?
You know, we've always wanted to make films, and so you know, that's something that we're still working on that we'd like to do. And it's funny, one of the filmmakers we're working with right now is actually in Canada. So it's like now that the film business is big in Atlanta, largely due to the tax breaks filmmakers can get here, we end up working with filmmakers in Canada. So it's kind of odd. But you know, they filmed my favorite movie, The Matrix, in Canada. So they have some great filmmakers up north.
So
I
you
noticed
have
on
the.
your web.
Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Continue.
No, go. It's all
Okay.
you, Greg.
So I noticed on your website that a lot of your comics, it seemed like most of them are Christian based. Would you publish a secular comic, or that's the thing? You're like, we just want to do, you know, like Christian themes, or will you do a comic just?
I don't know
it's
they're
fun?
necessarily Christian based, because Samson and the story of King Saul are Old Testament, so that's more kind of.
Well, let's say
Jewish
Jehovah. Whoever
Yeah.
believes in Jehovah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, you know, about a year ago we talked about what do we want to do going forward, and I would say that the comic books that we're working on right now are faith and family friendly, right? There's a
But
lot
faith meaning obviously Buddhism.
yeah, faith, you know, faith period.
Yeah.
If you yeah, and like you said, Samson and Dominion follow the House of Saul, the two, you know, titles that we're promoting at the moment. And we produce lots of other stuff that's secular that we're not really promoting at this time because we wanted to put our company's focus on these things. So
you're creating a niche for yourself, basically.
yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely an audience for this. And the two stories we have right now,
They got to be better than those little booklets that used to be sent out all over the place. It
Jack T.
scared the crap out of everybody.
Jack T. Chick comics, they're called.
Oh,
what are they called,
the
Greg?
turn or burn
Jack
thing.
T. Chick was the name of the company. Jack T.
Yeah.
Chick, and he had all those little pamphlets that you find in phone booths, and those things were like really gnarly. I mean, they were.
Yeah, I remember reading those things myself and being like, "Whoa, man!" You know, the whole turn or burn category of Bible tracts.
I didn't realize that there was a term for that. That's turn or burn. That's all about you, Greg. You will burn. You're burning, Greg.
That's what I called them. But it was just kind of a in your face. And I remember reading a comic book by a guy named Nicky Cruz, and it was about him being a gang member in South Central LA. And
the Cross and the Switchblade.
Yeah, the Cross and the Switchblade.
I still have that. I have.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Just so Matt knows, this guy from Archie Comics in the 70s convinced Archie to do this little sub imprint called Spire Christian Comics. And sometimes they would have the Archie characters kind of giving like a mild messages of faith, but then they had like all these weird other comics about like, you know, like faith, tales of faith, basically, like real stories of a nun who got Jews out of the concentration camps. And
yeah,
I have a few of those. They're pretty fun, those comics.
Yeah, I remember, you know, reading the Turn or Burn tracks, and I was like, oh, that's kind of like, that's kind of okay. But I read the other comics, by Nicky Cruz, and
I kind of want Turn or Burn as a sponsor of the show.
that would be a good
next week.
Turn or burn.
That's the idea.
You will believe, or you will die.
You will die. It's like in the original Poltergeist movie, you know, where the skeletal, you know, traveling pastor is like, "You will die." Scary.
I just remember this house is clean.
Yeah, the tiny little exorcist lady. But in that comic book by the sword and what is it? The
Cross and the
Cross
Switchblade.
and the Switchblade. Yeah. The thing I remember about that as a kid is he talked about he ripped an antenna off of a car to use as an improvised weapon when he's in like a fight with a guy who has a knife, right? And as a kid, I was like, ooh, wow, you know, now I'm prepared. If I ever get in a fight in a parking lot, I'll just rip I'll just rip an antenna off a car and I'll slash the guy with it.
And now cars don't have those antennas anymore.
I know, now they all retract, or they just don't have them at all.
There's little stubby things. You can poke them in the eye with it.
You could poke them in the eye for sure. But
I once had a broken car antenna go right through my hand. I put my hand on one I was playing zombie with my friends, and I slammed my hand down on it, and I didn't even realize till like 4 hours later that it went all the way through. I just thought it was a nasty gash. And then like 4 hours later, I looked and there was a flap of skin on my other side of my hand. I was going, holy shit. So I went right to the emergency room.
See, dude, those antennas are dangerous, man. You can do some damage with those things.
What is the game Zombie, Greg? I've never heard of playing
Me
Zombie.
and my friends would
Were you like chewing on each other's brains? What are you talking about?
We chase each other around like zombies. And like, okay, so you're a zombie, so you can't walk that fast. And you'll have to try and catch us. And my friend was pulling away in his car, and he had a broken car antenna, so it was jagged half antenna, and I just kind of went. Argh!
I don't care about that. I care about the game Zombie. That's not what I.
It didn't have a set rules. It wasn't like a.
What do you do?
Westminster. I mean, there was no
Westminster. The Westminster Zombie Show.
Like, was it like tag?
You're well-trained zombies to make sure that their testicles are hanging properly.
There weren't judges there saying you walk too fast as a zombie. You're out. Get out.
That's a show I'd watch. The Westminster Zombie Competition.
We were all straight edge kids. We were all straight edge kids who weren't drinking like all our other friends. So we had to have our own fun. We had to get silly in other ways.
But what about? I mean, because of the current zombies now, where they can run after you like fast.
This was before that.
Yeah. Okay. So.
No, except for Return of the Living Dead had come out at that point. So, but we weren't. We were thinking about classic Romero zombies.
Got it. So 28 Days Later wasn't there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't there yet.
Fair
this
enough.
is the mid-'80s.
Got it. All right. Sorry for the digression. That kind of happens.
That was great.
So yeah, I'm assuming at some point you'll be having your faith-based zombie comic books showing up at some point.
Of course.
That's made for it.
I mean, there are stories.
Tell you how to poke your hand with an antenna at that point.
I think.
So that was the story. The story was he could get an antenna that he could defend himself. That's where we went off on a tangent. So go start back there, Mark.
Yeah, Nikki Cruz. But there's a lot of stories in the Bible of people coming back to life from the dead. So
Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus, Lazarus, in the New Testament.
Well, I think you should just get into a whole thing where Methuselah is using stem cells to live forever.
Yeah, see,
it's like, how do you get to 500 years old back then? I don't know.
I think he was like 900 years old. Methuselah.
Was he 900? I thought he was.
I think it was 900. Yeah, something like that. Which, I mean, we're like, okay, how does that work? I don't know.
It's like very short months.
Very short months. That'll do.
Like a different calendar, very short months. That's the only thing I can think of. It just depends on the translation, because you never know which translation is giving you what.
Yeah, and one. It's interesting when you talk about translations. I think one of the misperceptions about the Bible is that this is what most people think. Well, it was, you have the autographs, which is some guy wrote it way back in the day, but over the years, these people got hold of it and they changed it and added and subtracted, and then these people got a hold of it like times 1,000. So what we have today bears no resemblance whatsoever to the original. What the original text said, because there's so many people with so many sort of selfish interests. They're trying to make the text say what they wanted it to say. But there's actually a science called textual criticism, right? Where there's a science for validating how accurate an old ancient document is. And it turns out the historicity of the Bible is like better than any other ancient document. So you may disagree with what it says, but the translations, the modern translations that we have, because we have so many documents that still exist and documents that have been discovered closer to the actual writing, we can pretty much tell when somebody got a bee in their bonnet and added a couple of words or took a couple of words out there, to make it say what they wanted it to say. So yeah, but it's like Mark Twain said, it's not the things it's not the things I don't understand in the Bible that bother me. It's the things I do understand.
I know I got issues with Noah personally, mainly because
there was an artist in the 90s, a comic book artist named Chester Brown, and he was adapting the Bible in the back of his weird comic. The rest of the comic was nuts, but he also did some of the Apocrypha, and some of those stories are fascinating. The stories that they cut out in like the 4th century at the synods, and there's weird stories where like one day like young boy Jesus was hanging out with Mary, and his brother shows up, or someone looks just like him, and then they embrace and then become one. Like these weird, almost mystical. It was almost like that mystical strain of Christianity. They weeded out
because he was like, oh, this is too weird. We don't want this in the Bible.
It was like the
But
Book
it was
of
there
Thomas
for
or
400
something. Right?
years. What?
So it was like the Book of Thomas, I think, is what you're talking about.
Oh, is that
right?
one of the apocryphal books?
I believe so. Yeah. I don't
Yes.
remember exactly.
Yeah, I've read apocryphal stories like he carves a wooden bird and then he makes it come to life. One apocryphal story was Jesus was sleeping in a place where there were bed bugs, and he commanded the bed bugs to go line up over there and to not bother anybody. And I was like, I mean, those are good stories.
That's a good comic book right there. The Power of Bedbug Command.
He's like Ant-Man.
It's like one of those like minor X-Men. They have the power to command bedbugs.
Or
right.
Like Ant-Man,
or
but
small
bedbugs.
insects. Right.
Bedbug Man.
Yeah, it's like the X-Men with the power to make bubbles or something. It's like, oh, that looks cool. I don't know what you do with that. Turning the wooden, bird into a real bird. It's all Pinocchio-ish and stuff.
Yeah, actually, that has some potential. If you could that's like how golems come to life, right?
Yeah, golems are made out of. Yeah, they're usually made out of clay or something.
Clay, right?
Yeah.
They have
Or
like
stone or something like that. Yeah.
And then you write the sign of Elam on their forehead, and they turn into golems. That's all you got to do.
No, not Gollum. It has to be a golem. If they turn into Gollum, they're in the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, golem. I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce golem correctly. Pardon my Hebrew.
It's
And,
fine.
and golems are come from Hebrew mythology, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
They defended the ghetto, the Jewish ghetto. So I'm curious, as if you don't mind, Matt, us nerding out a little. I'd like to, Mark. When you were a kid, what were your comics that you loved? What got you into comic books? Just the comic strips, or were you buying comic books too?
Yeah, I was kind of a poor kid, so I wasn't reading a whole bunch of comics, but I did get the 2 pages of comic books in the Sunday newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember The Wizard of Id was a favorite of mine. Dennis the Menace comics were a favorite of mine. Family Circus. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah, we're
It was
old. We
never
remember
ever-
all of them, Mark.
Yeah, it's good. The one with the Family Circus where they have the kid walking around and there's arrows.
Yes,
And it
Jeffy.
kind of shows what this kid does all day. And I was
I
like,
love those.
oh, I love those too, because it was totally me. And so I love that. Later on, I really loved The Far Side as I got a little older
Yeah.
and could get the humor. And I loved the way that he drew people and bugs. And so, yeah, I didn't like I remember there were some comics like Brenda Starr or something that were like soap operas in
Yeah.
comic book form.
I could never.
I
read that
hated
shit.
those things so much. I was like, why are they wasting space on my comic pages with this garbage? Why
Mark
don't they have
Trail.
more? Mark Trail. Oh, how lame was Mark Trail? I didn't like that stuff. But I like the Phantom. He had white eyes and he had the striped clothes and he's always sitting on the stone throne.
He was like a superhero. He was the only superhero on the comic pages, basically.
Yeah, and he lived on an island, I guess, and all this amazing stuff happened, and he had pet panthers and stuff.
You know what I thought was weird, though, thinking about the Family Circus? They had all those sweet strips about grandma talking to her dead husband, where it would be like, Grandma, who are you talking to? Oh, just an old friend. It was like they would make light of, like, she basically had dementia. It seemed kind of sad. But they would make all these cute little homilies about it. But it's like, no, this is sad. Put her in a home. She's seeing dead people walk around.
It's like Family Circus takes a turn.
Yeah.
It's like,
I like that.
Suddenly it's put grandma on a home day at Family Circus. Where are you taking me, Sonny?
Grandma's
Who are
gone.
these people? Who are these strangers? Who are you
Grandma's
talking to
gone.
now, Grandma? We'll visit you every 3rd week.
At least they're alive, Grandma. They're not dead. They're not ghosts.
That's true. Well, what do you do when grandma's gone around the bend? You just create a comic about it, I guess.
Yeah.
It was family seance at that point.
But I love Peanuts. Charles Schultz. That was always right at the top of the.
The thing that freaked
comic
me out
book
was when
page.
Charles Schultz died and Peanuts continued. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what is going on here? Is he drawing from the dead? I'm like, how can this be? Because they kept putting his name on it too. Like there was not some other artist. I'm like, did he have like years worth of Peanuts that never got put out again? It makes sense. But
No,
I used
they
to
were
read
just
everything
reprints.
in the comic strips. I mean, I read Prince Valiant, and Prince Valiant is basically soap opera form as well, but
It
from
is.
medieval times. There wasn't really
It's
any.
boring.
If it had medieval times, I would have been more interested than not. But
Yeah, but these things are supposed to be funny. I'm like, what are they doing? Like you mentioned, Mark Trail and Brenda Starr and those other
Right.
ones.
I always like
Why are
one
they
called
here?
Snuffy. Do you guys ever read something called Snuffy Smith?
Yes, I used to.
Yeah,
I used to
that's
actually
amazing.
have a comic book of Snuffy Smith.
Oh, I
I
love
had one of
that.
those too when I was a kid. I had a Snuffy Smith comic book.
You know, and Maul would go to the gossiping fence and, you know, sit there and
The
gossip
gossiping
about
fence.
stuff with the next door neighbors. And Snuffy Smith was always drinking moonshine.
Kind of
and
came
getting
out
crazy.
of. Wasn't that like a spin-off from Little Abner or something?
No, it was a
Probably.
spinoff of I think this old time comic like Moon Mullins or something. It was some other
Oh,
old timey
okay.
comic. But he took over the strip because people like this hillbilly goofball more than the original guy.
Isn't that
I
your
was-
nickname, Greg?
Hillbilly goofball?
Yes.
That's my job description.
Wow, that's a cool job.
I get paid.
Yeah, I
Hey,
remember
but we're
there's a
kind of.
comic-
What's that? Go ahead, Mark.
there's an animation that's produced by here locally called Squidbillies. I don't know if they're still doing it, but it was on Cartoon Network, and I love that too, just because I'm from the South, and there's a special brand of crazy in the South.
Yeah, that's a weird one. That was a weird cartoon. That
It
particular.
was really weird.
It's like octopus in like anthropomorphized with southern accents. It was,
land squids
land
with
squids.
shotguns and a trucker hat. Yeah, it was pretty odd.
I want to see this now. I've
It's
never heard
definitely
of
an
it.
acquired taste.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things on Cartoon Network, Greg. You'd probably get into.
Yeah.
I think it's available for streaming now these days.
Okay,
They have their own.
I'll do
channel.
that. So how many titles does Terminus have right now? Are you growing? Are you growing? Are you turning into a big publishing firm?
Yeah, we currently have 2 titles that we're actively promoting. The first one is Dominion, Fall of the House of Saul, and it's based on the first king of Israel, King Saul. It's inspired by the story there in 1 Samuel, but sort of our take on it is King Saul is a lion, like an anthropomorphic lion, and the world of Dominion is set in this intergalactic world of planets. And the bad guys, the Philistines, are the good guys. We'll start with that. The good guys are warm-blooded animals like lions and rhinos and gorillas and raccoons, stuff like that. The bad guys, the Philistines, are reptiles,
Of course, they are.
crocodiles, snapping turtles, stuff like that, snakes.
Geckos.
So we just tell the story of what happens there in 1 Samuel through these anthropomorphic characters that are set in an intergalactic world. They have spaceships and they shoot lasers and they have big battle mechs that they fight one another.
Big battle. What did you say? What was the
They
word?
have
after
battle mechs, like big
Mechs.
mechanized,
Oh, got it. Okay.
like Godzilla-sized mechs that they fight with. And
I mean,
when-
like Transformers or Voltron type things. They like get into those things and battle with them.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah,
lions
exactly.
in there.
Voltron,
Got
form
it.
blazing sword and
Okay.
sort of thing. And when Baron Bell, the creator, Dr. Baron Bell, the creator, pitched it to me, he's like talking about lions in space, and I was like, I'll just stop you right there. We're
It's like
totally
straight out of the
gonna
Muppet Show. Lions in space.
We should do puppets for Dominion. That would be awesome. always loved the Muppet Show. I don't know about you guys, but
Oh, me too.
Well, you can see like I think every
Oh.
season now on the Disney Channel. I think it's now
Do they?
available.
Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta go check it out.
Disney Plus, I mean.
I think
I
me
really-
and Matt would be perfect if they ever did a reboot. We could be those 2 old men in the balcony. Were they Waldorf and Astoria? Whatever
Yeah,
their name was.
Waldorf.
Waldorf Astoria.
Statler and Hilton.
Waldorf
be
Astoria is a hotel in New York, Greg. You should know
Yeah,
that.
that's what they were named after. Or they were Statler and Hilton.
It's
I
Stat-
remember.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
right.
Statler and Waldorf, Greg.
Statler
They had
and
2
Waldorf.
hotels. I knew I was close. I knew it was hotels they were named after.
Yeah, I always loved the Muppet Show. So it was a Lions in Space thing, and
Is that the thing that's selling really well with Terminus Media right now? Is Dominion?
oh man,
Dominion did
if you say to me, and it's funny, I read something from Cartoon Network one time. They're saying if you're going to pitch us something, don't pitch us anything with monkeys in it. And I always thought about that, like that is so specific, like saying don't pitch us something with monkeys in it. So if you're pitching something to Terminus, if it's lines in space, I'm pretty much going to say yes. I grew up watching Thundercats. That beginning sequence of Thundercats is still one of my favorite action animation scenes of all time.
Oh, that was great.
The whole Thundercats are on the loose, and the music and the kinetic.
You talked before about like when you turn 8 years old, you stop reading comic books. Thundercats is when I stopped watching cartoons.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Were you like, this is
that
too
was
much?
my turning point. That was like, done. I'm no more.
You're like,
I'm not watching cartoons
The animation's
anymore.
too good for me.
I don't know that it was that so much as like I had reached some level in my genetic engineering, which made me go, I'm now no longer watching cartoons at this stage of my life.
You were too cool for school.
I just remember the Thundercats had come out, and I had like absolutely no interest in watching it. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm done with this genre.
So the
I
big
didn't like it either, but I recognize that the animation was a total step up. Like, I know what you're talking about because I was a kid when that came out. I don't know how old you were, but that opening sequence with that amazing animation compared to all the shit that I grew up watching on TV animation, it was like, whoa.
Yeah, we grew up watching like Hanna-Barbera, and it's the grape ape is talking to Huckleberry Hound, and it's the Laugh Olympics or something. That's when I stopped watching animation because I was like, this is stupid. I'm not watching this crap. But when I was a kid, there was things like, I think it started with He-Man, and I thought Tila was pretty good looking on He-Man cartoons.
Yeah, a little crush.
Had a little crush on Tila, and then they came out.
And then you had the crush on the
Thundercats.
Giant Tiger.
The Giant Tiger.
And then now you have Lions in Space. It all makes sense now.
Right, it all makes sense. Lions in Space. But he pitched it to me, and we'd done a series with Dr. Bell before called Radio Free America. And Radio Free America is one of the titles that's on our page that is not overtly faith-based or Bible-based or anything like that. It's just a great story that has a positive core to it. Basically, the United States gets nuked by external powers, EMP pulse. There's no more computers. There's the food chain is gone. Everything's gone, and one of the foreign powers is coming from this direction. The other's coming from this direction. So all the people in the middle are escaping to Canada. And I think the key thing with it, though, is that the main protagonist, Mose B, is sending out encoded messages to the resistance through the beats and scratches of hip hop music on this pirate radio called Radio Free America. So it's almost like hip hop culture becomes what saves America. And there's scenes in Radio Free America where gangbangers and cops are fighting against the invading powers together. It's kind of like the old Benjamin Franklin quote, upon signing the Declaration of Independence, he said, "Gentlemen, if we will either all hang together or we will all hang separately." And so we produced that book about 10 years ago. We wanted to get the message out that, hey, we're all Americans, and we need to care about one another, and we need to look out for one another.
And that's a perfect segue into our client for today. So I want to thank you very much, Mark, for being on. For those of you interested in seeing more of what he does, it's terminusmedia.com. That's where you can find all of the comic books they have, Dominion, Samson Rise, a number of other things as well. And right now, if you want, Mark, we totally will welcome you if you want to join in as we discuss and we try to help our client for today, which is accepting you're part of the problem, not the solution. So I'm giving you a choice right now if you'd like to continue on. We still have about 18 minutes left of the show, or if you can make one final plug right now on your business. It's entirely up to you what you would like to like to do.
Well, I'll just say, I took Muay Thai classes back in the day from a 5-time world champion, and you learn something when you get hit for the first time, whether you're a fighter or a fleer. So I'm definitely a fighter, so I'm down, fellas. Bring it on. What you got?
Okay, so Greg, when we were talking about this client before, you had said that you're definitely part of the problem, and that people shouldn't be expected to be part of the solution or something.
I did not
those
say
lines.
that at all. You're
Yes,
totally
you,
misquoting
something
me.
along those lines. You did something
said
very weenie-like.
No, I said if you're the kind of radical extremist who says that in the first place, that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, which I thought was bullshit.
Wait, why would a radical extremist be somebody who would say that, though?
Because they're the ones who did in the 60s. All those radical extremists, like, you're part of the problem. It's like, no, sorry, I'm just...
Well, maybe they did in the 60s, but that term has become, like, its own, taken a life of its own throughout the decades since then.
And it's bullshit.
And it's not just radical extremists who are saying
it's still a bullshit thing to say. I think, like, there's a lot of people who are just busy living their lives. They have a hard enough time to survive, and that doesn't mean they're just as bad as the people who start the problem, just because they can't go out there and help every day and be on the front lines.
I think you're just making an excuse so you don't have to do that kind of
thing. No, I'm not. I wish I could do more to help the world, but,
just so you don't have to have any guilt for it. That's why I think you're taking that stance.
I have guilt. I wish I could go to food kitchens every other day and donate, but I get home from my job and I'm fucking exhausted and my legs hurt. I can barely do shit after a day of work. I know it's an excuse and I wish I could do more, but I'm saying that doesn't mean that I'm just as bad as someone who, like, leads to these problems. Well,
it doesn't mean you're just as bad by saying you're part of the problem, though. It just means that you're not helping to fix things in any way.
I know exactly. That's what you're not helping fix things. That doesn't mean you're a problem. It means, sorry, I wish I could help, but I can't.
You're the one who would stand by and watch the Jews go into the gas chambers.
No,
based on what you're saying.
There's
Greg.
A line. You might have too.
I would probably be one of the ones going into the gas chamber.
Well, half of you, but the other half would be saying, sorry, I don't have time.
Actually, I would be like at war. Half of me would be pushing the Jews into the gas chamber. The other half would be getting pushed into the gas chamber. That is my ancestry. So...
They would have had me for being just, like, anti-Nazi. I mean, they killed some people in the concentration camps who just were like, fuck this. I don't agree with you.
No, it's like I've got Jewish on one side of my family and I got KKK on the other side of the family. It's really quite bizarre.
It's confusing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I listened to a book series called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, right? It's one of the most, it's something like 100 hours of audio. I don't know why I listened to the whole thing, but one of the, you mentioned the gas chambers. The first people they came after, not to, totally bring the show down.
Oh, no, that's what we're all about. Bring it down.
Well, I'm happy.
Our listeners don't really care about us anyway, so feel free.
Well, the first people the Nazis came after were the people in the insane asylums, the people who were physically disabled. The Nazis described them as useless eaters, right? And so what would happen is
that would be Greg's category.
I was just listening to that song last night on my iPod. It came up.
Useless eaters.
That's the name of the song?
It's a punk rock song. It is a real song.
Is it really?
And I didn't know what it meant. I was like, what a weird term. Basically, the song just goes, I am a useless eater. It's this weird punk song. And I was like, what a weird term. But I guess they were referencing.
Well, now we know. Well, continue educating us, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah. And, what would happen is they would whack them in the sanitarium or wherever they were, and they would send their family a letter saying, your loved one has passed away. Here's the ashes. Right. No explanation of what happened. They just liquidated them. And so
they liquidated them. Here's $5.
Yeah. Well, with the question,
every useless eater must go.
Yeah.
Have a useless eater in liquidation sale. There's our next sponsor, Greg.
But the definition of useless eater kept getting bigger and bigger, and now it's these people. Now it's the trade unions. Now it's the communists. Now it's all these Jewish people.
Right.
And now we need to export this all over the world. And I think there was a point where in terms of the question at hand of are you part of the solution or part of the problem, there was a tipping point, right? Where if the people had stood up at one point and said, we got to stop these crazy people. They can't do this. But there was a tipping point where everybody was playing it safe. And, I don't want to stick my head up because then, I'll get my head whacked. There was a point where it was too late. It was too late for the people in Germany and Poland and all these other places and France to do anything effective. There was always freedom fighters, but I think it's the whole the whole frog in the boiling pot thing.
Right, just slowly getting cooked and you're not realizing that it's happening.
Yeah, and you say, was it their fault? Those people, those innocent people who were just like you said, trying to live their lives and, hey, let me keep a roof over my head and food in the fridge. But yeah, it's one of those things where at some point you have the choice to act, and then at some point you don't anymore. So
yeah, it's that whole rallying against the status quo to make change. You know, there's always got to. It's an interesting societal dilemma, I think, overall, because there'll be people who are the hardcore activists who are like, I see a need for change and things need to, and it needs to happen, and they point their finger at you because you're not doing what you should be doing for this, you know. And sometimes you can rally some people from the edge of laziness into activity, and then or into from the edge of exhaustion into activity where they can get like a little bit more out of them. But it really takes some dyed-in-the-wool believers of a cause to truly make those changes. So the question becomes like, what makes that cause strong enough to pull somebody out of their exhaustion or laziness? So Greg, what would be a cause that would make you finally leave your bottle of whiskey at home and walk outside and actually do something for humanity? What would get you actually
this actually
involved in
happened
part of the
last year.
solution, Greg?
This actually happened last year where, I mean, it's easy for me to say because I don't even like living that much, but it wouldn't be that brave of me to risk my life. But when it really looked like Trump wasn't going to step down and we were going to lose American democracy, I was like, I got to get a gun. I'm not going to just sit here and be like, okay, I guess Trump's our fascist leader.
Were you
going
to go out and shoot somebody? Why would you get a gun?
No, I wouldn't shoot a random person, but if there was like whatever the fascist forces who were like, we're enforcing this and we're going to, it would be a civil war, Matt. That's what would happen.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I'm not just going to be like, oh, I'm just going to sit around. I'm like, no, I would definitely feel, but I just, I couldn't even afford a gun at that point, but I wanted one. For the first time in my life, I wanted a gun. I never wanted a gun in my life.
Well, I
never
remember
cared.
you talking about wanting a gun, and Brendan, our co-host in Florida, had said he could certainly get you a gun if you really wanted a gun.
Did he say he would pay for it, though? I just thought he said he'd make it squeak.
I think he could probably get you
an
an expensive one within your whiskey budget. He could probably pull one off.
Yeah, that's the thing. I would have had to sacrifice some things, definitely.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, what would take to get you out of your comfort area?
Okay, if Trump actually did not step down and that January 6th Capitol thing actually turned into something, yeah, I would have gotten a gun somehow.
Really?
I would have broken into a store and gotten a gun.
yeah, and it's ironic, the Republicans back in the 18 whatevers with Lincoln, leading them, they came to a point where they're like, this whole slavery thing, not gonna tolerate it anymore.
Yeah.
And we're willing to take up arms against our brothers to punctuate that.
And that took like 100 years of work from the Quakers to get people to that state.
Yes.
Starting back in England, where the Quakers were working towards abolition and getting people to recognize that Africans had human rights and that they deserved to have their own rights. So, it takes like that core group in the beginning to start getting a word out, but then it becomes like, who's going to believe what? So, it's like our friend Brendan, he didn't have a political reason for not getting the vaccination. He was just too damn lazy to get one. And now he's got COVID, right? So this will be like a fun conversation when he's finally feeling better and he's back on the show where we get to talk to him about like, okay, Brendan. Whereas Greg and I like specifically found a place actually like a couple of 100 miles away from here, and I grabbed Greg and forced him to go with me to get a vaccine, so that I knew that he would survive things. I couldn't do that with our other co-hosts.
He saved my life
across the country.
That's a true friend right there.
I think I just wanted company is mainly it. Yeah. Greg never leaves his apartment, so he needed a road trip somewhere.
I don't have a car, so I could have got there.
That's right. But I know there's so many issues out there where I go, yeah, I should be more concerned about that, and I go, I just don't feel like it. And I go, should I have guilt? I'm like, I could have guilt. I could have guilt about those things. Like you hear about like recently I was just watching some videos about people talking about the pipelines issues in Minnesota, and there's this Canadian company that's actually paying American law enforcement to take out water protectors who are trying to prevent the pipelines from being built, and like
Wow.
this law got passed in Minnesota where now it's okay to kill the water protectors. Now I think there's some
Well,
nuances to it that it probably doesn't say something like that. It says kill water protectors. I'm sure there's something a little more layered than that.
Yeah, but they're
The legalese.
obstructing something.
Right.
They have the right to be.
Or various different other issues. That's just one I just happened to be reading about today, where I go, okay, I could do something about that. I'm in my mid 50s now, and death isn't too far away.
yeah. But I think we have to give ourselves a break sometimes. It's like we are not omnipotent. We're not all powerful.
Yeah.
I'm a man of faith, so I believe that God's got this. If the evil Trump tries to overtake the Capitol and take over, God's got this, and if he needs my help, he'll let me know. You know what I mean?
I've always found I'm not a Christian. I don't have a problem with people who are Christians, and I've always tried to reconcile the concept of God and evil deeds and things. And so for me, I look at it as, if you're going to believe in God, and if you're going to believe that God allows these things to happen, the reason, from my mind, that makes sense is it's designed as a lesson. In other words, COVID is here to teach humans how to solve those problems, how to solve the problem of COVID, how to create vaccines that could potentially benefit larger amounts of people. So you have to
better
have
hygiene.
What's that?
Have better hygiene.
Right. To teach drunks how to wash
your
their
hands. Wash your hands.
To teach drunks how to wash their hands finally. Like, that's really the purpose of COVID, is to finally get drunks to wash
He's
their
all
hands.
like, I am so tired of you guys with your dirty hands, and you're coming around and you're doing all, wash your hands.
Well, I was raised Jewish, and the message I really got from the Old Testament was Jews are always flipping off God. Like, they're always pissing God off, so he's always sending problems to them, going, listen, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you guys not obeying and doing what I ask. And so it's like one more thing after another. It's like, really? I got to do this again? Do you guys never learn? It's like, I always imagine God is kind of like a Jewish mother to an extent. It's like, come on, guys. I've given you one more chance. Now I've got to send younger brother around to teach you another lesson. There's the New Testament coming in. Like, okay, we're going to try some other thing. Will this get the Jews in line? Well, probably not.
But what about the story of Job, though? The story of Job, it always struck me as weird when I was 6. I was like, what the hell is God doing to this poor guy? He didn't do shit.
Job's just hanging out and
well, he got to learn about the insides of a Leviathan.
Yeah,
I think it was like an anatomy lesson.
Well, that was Jonah, right? But
sorry, Jonah. Sorry,
Job is the guy he's just hanging out, and the devil comes in, is talking to God apparently, which kind of blew my mind as a kid. He's like, I thought God and the devil they didn't like one another anymore, and they weren't on speaking terms, but apparently they were, because the devil's like, God says to the devil, have you considered my servant Job? And the devil's like, oh man, he's all blessed and stuff because he just kisses your butt all the time, God. But if you do anything bad to him, he'll curse you to your face.
It does make you kind of wonder, like, what God's butt looks like when he's saying, anyway. But anyway, go ahead.
God's like, oh well, you can do anything to him, just don't kill him. And so the devil, proceeds to do everything to him. He gives him boils. He kills his children. He takes
and God lets him.
God allows the devil to put the smackdown on him. And I guess the whole point of that story is Job never curses God in his face. And he tells his wife, hey, should we accept good from God and not evil? Why don't you shut your mouth, to his wife, who's, I guess he didn't lose her in the process. But the story ends with, and God gave Job all of his stuff back and gave him new children. And I'm sitting there going, what about the old children who got squashed?
And he suffered for years.
They're like Legos. You just get replacement children. Here you go. Stick them right here in your little Lego car. Move along.
Well, it's that whole God's ways are not our ways. And I'm like, you got that right. Because I would never do that to somebody, especially somebody that, was thumbs up and says that I was great. Yeah,
That's right.
I
You
don't
keep
get it.
following me, I'll destroy your life. You'll be okay with that, right? Yeah, I thought so.
Right, right. So,
So is that next in the works of a comic book for you guys doing the story of Job?
oh, that would be. I think
That'd
that
be
would
a
make
dark
a
one.
doozy of a. I think it'd make a doozy of a comic, but man, it's it kind of has that whole U-shaped plot where it's like, oh, he's down in the depths, and his friends are actually coming around and saying, dude, what did you do? Why is God so mad at you? And he's like, I didn't do anything. And they're like,
Well, maybe you just
right.
like,
I mean,
maybe who's
well,
just
but
ugly.
like when something goes bad in your life, people are like, oh, his wife left him. Oh, he must have done something. He must not be a very good husband.
So, Greg, were you pointing out that Job was part of the solution or part of the problem?
He was neither. He was just a poor victim of God and the devil playing a little get bet because they were bored one day.
Was it for like $1? Was it $1 bet? I bet you I can
No.
turn Job. Here's $1.
Yeah, I didn't know what they
Make
were
it
betting
happen.
for. I think it was just to prove who's right. Their egos.
In our second comic book in the Evolution series we were talking about earlier, there's one story where Gabriel and the devil come into an old Western town, and they play cards for the town, right? And whoever wins can have the town. So yeah, we've kind of explored this this sort of thing in some of our other comic books. But,
Although I never quite understood how you could put the devil on the same playing field as God, really. Because that kind of like diminishes the omniscience and omnipotence that God is if you categorize God in that. I think it all depends upon like what your own personal version of God happens to be like. What's the power level? Is the devil really just the multiple personality aspect of God or something? Is it just like, or do all roads really lead to Brahma in the Hindu religion, as they say, which is probably the case.
So you want like a Marvel Universe handbook of like how much can a God bench press and how much can the devil bench press and how tall they are, who could win in a fight.
I don't think it's so much that as, if it's omnipotence that one has and the other one does not have it, that in and of itself explains it all. Right.
Yeah, and if you're talking about the biblical version of God, God is all powerful, and
all knowing.
The devil is a created being who has to obey, basically.
Right. And so does that mean that the devil has no free will? Because those are only humans that had free will.
He has to have free will because he was in heaven.
Yeah.
Like according to the Bible, he's in heaven, hanging out with God. He's in charge of the music.
Yeah.
He's a rock star in heaven, basically.
Yeah. He's in
then
charge
he says,
of the liars.
I will be like,
all the liars he was playing. L-Y-R-E.
Right.
Yeah.
All the liars. But then he says, I will be like the Most High God. That was his crime, right? I will put myself on the same level of God. And
was it a crime or was it a plan?
I think there was war in heaven. He tried to take over me. He got the
but he couldn't smackdown. Because if God was all-knowing, this is the key term, all-knowing, like future and past. God knew this was going to be happening. It was designed, or not designed, but at least known about that it was going to occur.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. In Star Trek, they talk about the time-space continuum.
Yeah.
And there's like time isn't something that is here only. It's like a continuum. And like if you think about God in terms of time, God can be here or here or here on the time-space continuum at any given time.
Yeah.
So did he know that would happen? Yeah. Did he allow it to happen anyway? Yeah. Why?
Yeah, is the answer to that.
Yeah. So it almost kind of makes you think that, is that really omnipotence if you can't even change fate or destiny? Well,
it's not necessarily not being able to, it's whether you choose to.
Right. True, but I mean, he's stuck in that same time-space continuum where everything has always happened and everything that will happen has happened.
Not necessarily. He could be outside of that time-space continuum, looking in.
Yeah. But doesn't it imply if you're omnipotent, you could jump out of it and be like, no, I'm changing this. I don't like this whole path.
He's outside of that time-space continuum.
Well, it talks about there will be a time when time will end, but it's do we have free will, or are we predestined to be whatever, God has decided? we predestined or do we have free will? Answer, yeah.
That shit always gives me a
I
headache.
believe in free will because look at Greg's hair.
Your hair is pretty spectacular.
No God would
bro,
create that
No,
particular.
God told me to get this haircut. God came to me in a dream.
It's awesome. I gotta say. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
impressive. Impressive.
I want to look like a pineapple.
Little tuft right on the side. You do look like a pineapple.
who lives in a pineapple in his apartment
in Portland, Oregon.
in Portland.
All right. Well, we've come to. Did we come to a resolution here, Greg, about accepting that you're part of the problem and not part of the solution? Is there climate helped at all today?
It's one of those just cliches that people say too much, and it's not really true. But whatever, I get it. I could be helping more.
Yeah, we can always be helping. We can always take time from whatever we're doing to do something.
But we're not all superheroes. We're fucking human beings. We're not superheroes. It's like we're not all Mother Teresa. And we shouldn't feel terrible about not being Mother Teresa, sacrificing.
No, I think you should feel terrible, Greg. Specifically you.
Okay.
Yes. Nobody else, just you should feel terrible about it.
Okay, I feel terrible about many other things. So thanks. Give me another reason to not like myself.
You're just not good enough, Greg.
I've never been, and now I'm even worse apparently because I'm not feeding starving children.
Well, at the very least, you've given plasma for the Red Cross or something, right? You've given.
I got money for it. It wasn't charity.
Yeah, but you still did it. I've never done it.
So. I needed money. You didn't need money that desperately. You weren't as poor as me.
Well, that could be part of it. I don't know.
That was definitely.
As we've talked before, Mark, you're probably a much better person than either of us. But Greg and I have this ongoing repartee about how we have tiny little cold hearts. Oh no, we've caused Mark to go to sleep and disappear. Wait, he's back. And
I'm back.
Back and unmuted. So I was saying that we have this thing that goes back and forth that we have these tiny little cold hearts. And so I think Greg is good because he can at least have guilt about these things that he's not doing, whereas I will look at them and go,
Yeah,
I should do something about it.
I grew up Catholic, Mark.
Today I'm not really.
I mean, Catholics have guilt for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
And there's so many charitable works out there to do, and so I just choose not to do any. That's where the choice I make. I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could do this other thing. I'm like, I think the best thing is if I just don't get involved. I'll just upset the people who are doing the good works. So that's the statement.
Yeah. I think God loves us, and He understands that we're just people and we screw up, and He loves us anyway. So,
but I think I've come to a conclusion for at least me personally, which is that. I should just be okay with not doing anything for anybody because if I get involved, I'll make somebody's day worse, and so it's better for me to stay away from it. And that's how I'm doing my good work is by not getting involved with other people who are doing good work, who are decent people.
I think that's a very generous thing for you to do. Like,
it is.
If I get involved in anybody, I'm just going to screw it up. So my gift to them
I won't screw it up. I'll screw them up. And
he'll screw them up.
Yeah, I know. I would probably do an exceptional job, but whatever it is, the thing is.
So you'll feed the poor and you'll give them food poisoning. You'll be like, shit, he's below me.
No. What I would do is I would just upset the people who have the food that they're going to be giving to the poor, and they'll wind up poisoning them or something, or I'll get them depressed and they'll run away from doing their work.
You're there at the homeless shelter. You're annoying
disillusioning everyone else who's working there, and they all
quits, they say we can't take this guy mad anymore. We're out of here. And then what do the homeless people do?
Right, then they'll have to follow those people home who just left.
They'll have to move into Matt's house. That would be justice.
I just like what's happening is as we're having these conversations, Mark occasionally his face freezes into these interesting shapes that he's having right now.
Oh yeah, I see it now.
He's got like pursed lips right now. Which is it's actually an interesting shape. You don't see that shape often from a mouth.
I think he was actually just about to say, Matt, you're ludicrous. That's what he was saying.
I don't know. No, he's back now. I don't know if you heard any of me talking about the shape of your lips just then. Frozen again. We probably should end this the next time he comes back on so that he doesn't keep freezing. But for those of you out there who don't know what this has been the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. And our guest today is Mark Stancil, who is the CEO of Terminus Media. And you can go to terminusmedia.com. Oh, he's back. All right, Mark. So we're ending off before you freeze again. So do one more plug for the thing you do, and we'll shut this down.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate you, Matt and Greg. God bless you guys. And if you want to check us out, we're at www.terminus, TERMINUS media, all one word.
.com. I'll end it for him.
Damn it.
We almost made it through, and then he froze again.
Made it through. .org.
No, not .org. It's .com. At terminusmedia.com. We're .org.
.com. And that's right.
Okay.
Terminusmedia.com.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks,
guys. Appreciate it.
It's great having you.
Your consultation with the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker has ended. You may pay your retainer at www.qsblaw.org. Please exit to the right of the water cooler and grab a candy from the front desk. We hope to see you again soon, but you need to leave now. I said leave. Why don't they ever listen? Get out! Get out!